Okay, sir. So today in brief, I will be discussing about anesthesia for laparotomy in a trauma patient. It's a weekend duty and we get a call from ED that a patient with blunt trauma abdomen has come and the patient is having positive DPL or a patient is having fast positive, he's unstable and he's being planned for emergency laparotomy. When we take history, we find that this gentleman was just having drinks and his meal. So to concise, trauma, abdomen, and the patient plan for polytrauma are full of surprises. Most urgent cases occur at night usually and during the weekend shifts when more experienced anesthetists are not available. Patient information is limited and previous medical history and details of chronic medication, allergies, or genetic abnormalities are unknown. Patients often present intoxicated or full stomach. There can be multiple injuries like thoracic trauma combined with abdominal trauma, and the patient might require several procedures in the same OT setting. So it is associated with different positions for different, like a patient going for laparotomy, then he's having thoracic trauma and he might need lateral positioning and thoracotomy. Another consideration is a difficult airway is not unusual and special airway management equipment may be required at very short notice. Occult injuries such as tension pneumothorax and cardiac tamponade can manifest on OT table itself. The indications are all penetrating wounds need to be explored, all gunshot wounds, and blunt abdominal injuries with the patient having signs of peritonitis or if uncontrolled shock or hemorrhage is there, clinical deterioration during observation, and if the patient is having hypotension with positive fast or diagnostic peritoneal lavage. In pre-op preparations, we should inform all concerned and activate the operating room, adequate arrangement of blood products, informing the blood bank, and arrange for the massive transfusion protocol. If cross-match is not available, at least trauma pack should be present. Basic investigations, including pregnancy test if appropriate for age. Neck stabilization all through the preparation and shifting is essential. Fluid resuscitation and antibiotics should be started. And after ruling out head injury and urethral or pelvic injuries, Ryle's tube and urinary catheterization is necessary. In management of anesthesia, the basic points which we will be looking is rapidly securement of the airway with minimizing the risk of pulmonary aspiration. Hemodynamic stability during the rapid sequence intubation is necessary and throughout the perioperative period. Optimal volume and type of fluids as well as blood products, analgesia or last May post-operative considerations. Coming to induction, careful positioning with ASA standard monitoring is guaranteed. Then minimum 2 wide bore IV access is needed prior to induction. Patients for laparotomy for blunt trauma abdomen, we should have established arterial line for monitoring and sampling during the perioperative period. Hypothermia is an important consideration and applying warming blankets over the non-operating field. Then surface warmer should be in place and rapid infuser systems or hotline should be there in OT. Prior to induction, nasogastric tube suction to minimize the risk of pulmonary aspiration of gastric content is important because we will be considering all the patients full stomach. In airway securement and rapid sequence induction of anesthesia, the anesthetic technique, whichever we are using and the drugs which we are using, it shall provide rapid onset anesthesia and neuromuscular blockade. So the neuromuscular blocking agent which we are using should be fast acting and it should provide good conditions for tracheal intubation. Then in measures to avoid hypotension at induction of anesthesia, we can use increased dose of opioid and reduce the dose of thiopentol or propofol. Then ketamine in dose of 1 to 2 mg per kg can be used as IV induction agent or in combination with thiopentol or propofol. The use of rocuronium instead of succinylcholine has gained popularity. It removes the adverse effect of succinylcholine such as hyperkalemia. increased intraocular pressure, succinyl choline apnea, and malignant hyperthermia. Maintenance of anesthesia can be with volatile agents or total intravenous anesthesia, depending upon clinician's preference and clinical situation. Coming to management of fluids and hemodynamic support. The management of fluids is guided by hemodynamic features such as heart rate and arterial pressure, and markers of organ perfusion such as serum lactate and base excess. Balanced crystalloid solutions offer the mainstay of therapy. Synthetic colloids such as hydroxyl ethyl starches, which were used earlier, are no longer indicated due to association with renal injury. Intraoperatively, large crystalloid volumes lead to gastrointestinal complications such as increased extremity compartment pressures, coagulation disturbances, electrolyte imbalance, hypothermia, and abdominal compartment syndrome. In blood products, the blood product should be always considered and used in resuscitation as well as replacement whenever patient is having anemia, thrombocytopenia, or coagulopathies. In situation of severe hemorrhage, massive transfusion protocol should be initiated. If the patient is actively bleeding, we have to transfuse to keep the platelet count to more than 50,000. INR should be maintained less than or equal to 1.5. And fibrinogen should be measured intermittently in perioperative period, and it should be maintained to more than 1 gram per liter. If the patient is having associated head injury, then a platelet count of more than 1 lakh should be maintained. It is important to have perioperative and intraoperative investigations going side by side. If the facility of TEG or ROTEM is there, then we should use that also. And the values of base deficit, lactate levels, and urine output should be there, should be measured intermittently to guide intraoperative resuscitation. There is a newer concept of damage control surgery. In this, the definitive treatment of the injury is not possible. If the definitive treatment of injury is not possible due to their extent or due to the shock, which is accompanying hypothermia or coagulopathy, then the operation should be terminated with packing done in the abdominal cavity and the temporary closure of the abdomen. Definitive treatment of the organ injuries can be undertaken earlier, and it can wait for several hours or till next day. And the patient should be taken to the OT again when their hemodynamic situation is better and there is physiological restoration with the patient's body temperature or organ function have improved. We should always remind surgeon to look for to keep in mind regarding the abdominal compartment syndrome, where if we are feeling that it's difficult to close, and all the patients, we have to remind surgeon that kindly look for retroperitoneal bleed also and check all 4 quadrants: splenic fossa, subhepatic, pelvic region, and retroperitoneal. Extubating a patient or continuing the patient to post-op ventilation depends upon patient's acid-base status, oxygen requirement, vasopressor requirement, and temperature. If the patient is severely hypothermic or very unstable on high inotropes, then any acidosis is there, then it's better to shift patient to post-op unit with continued ventilatory support. Suppose the patient's physiological status is good enough and we are planning for tracheal extubation, the risk of pulmonary aspiration we should keep in mind, and we should always suction the Ryle's tube or the nasogastric tube which is placed there, and also suction the pharynx or the oral cavity. In post-operative considerations, the analgesia is very important. Poorly managed pain may lead to distress and increased risk of post-operative pulmonary complications such as atelectasis and pneumonia. Techniques to minimize the use of opioids include central neuroaxial analgesia, transverse abdominis plane block, or posterior rectus sheath block. These blocks can be combined to central neuroaxial analgesia, and then the patient should have a better outcome. Thoracic epidural analgesia can provide superior analgesia for abdominal and pelvic surgeries and reduce the incidence of post-operative ileus. Other options of analgesia include intraoperative administration or co-administration of lignocaine, ketamine, or magnesium infusions. Lignocaine given IV with the bolus 1 mg per kg and then 0.5 mg per kg per hour infusion has been found to reduce opioid requirements. Similarly, ketamine and magnesium infusions, magnesium infusion at around 25 mg per kg per hour and ketamine infusion like 0.3 mg per kg per hour have shown to decrease the requirement of opioids. In other post-op considerations, avoidance of hyperglycemia, optimizing the nutritional status. Since sepsis, surgical stress, and trauma itself, they are catabolic states and they can lead to lot of energy consumption and loss of muscle mass. We should always maintain patient's nutrition status. If enteral is not possible, then parenteral to prevent malnutrition, sarcopenia, and weakness. Thromboprophylaxis is another important thing which we have to keep in mind. So stockings if the injuries allow, and unfractionated heparin postoperatively is important. Thank you, sir.